Right guys, welcome to VALORANT News. The roster drama continues last night, especially in the Americas. Big rumours as to what Evil Geniuses and also Cloud9 might be up to going into the upcoming year. We think that EG might be fully squad wiping, but some interesting players noted in their scrims over the last couple of days, but also Cloud9 net out the door it seems for next season with big changes around the corner. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Plenty to get into today. We're going to start here with Veto because the drama continues on this agent, whether he's fair, whether changes need to be made. And there's talk about, as a sentinel, whether on certain maps he could be a little bit too strong. The ability of his kind of trap to actually get thrown around the place gives you the possibility to get information rather earlier than other sentinels are able to do so. But also everything that his, well, what's it called, evolution, right, his full immunity in the ultimate ability, what it actually gives you immunity from. So this is what it looks like. Here are all the other agents in the game. If it's green, it's not affected. If it's white, then it can't be affected, right? So, you know, for example, Jet, the updraft, the smoke, whatever, like obviously it's not going to do anything about that. It gives info on the things in the yellow, but in the red it totally ignores them, right? So if you look at, let's say, Breach or Brimstone or a ton of the different agents, they just won't do anything to him. There's only a couple of agents that will do anything, right? Let me look, where's Chamber real quick? Okay, yeah, Chamber's ultimate does still kill him. So there's 3 that still will, and you've got the Jet Knives, you've got Chamber's ultimate, and then you've got Neon's ultimate. But basically anyone else, even Raises, right? You'd think maybe Raises would get through, but it doesn't. So that doesn't kill him. Basically nothing else is going to kill him either. It's only those 3 ultimates that do anything, really. Chamber's pretty good against him. But yeah, anyway, that's your kind of quick announcement, really, as to what affects his ultimate and what doesn't. It's interesting that the Killjoy turret, it seems, is unaffected as well. But anyway, if you have any interesting observations, leave them in the comment section below. The point is, his ability lasts forever as well. So he announces it at the start of the round, activate it at the start of the round. You can see it on the radar, so you know that he's got it, but you know, him knowing he's got it and actually taking him down are different conversations. So that's the debate on Veto right now. He's also got a teleport, which it turns out is pretty difficult to hear apparently. So compared to some other ones, that's, I don't know, Veto looks pretty strong, I will say, from early evidence. Now, this is what's happening over the coming weeks in VALORANT. The World Championship is done. Doesn't mean there's no VALORANT going on because Ascension is just around the corner. This may be the last ever year of Ascension. It may be just the last year for some time. If you guys have seen the announcement for next season, Ascension is no longer a thing. Not the Ascension tournament anyway. Challengers is still a thing. If you're a top Challengers team, you can actually qualify next year for the Pro League Stage 2 playoffs, and presumably if you come top 3, then you'll qualify or whatever for the World Championship that year, or maybe top 2, whatever the rules are going to be. But the point is that a Challengers team next year can make it through in a different way, probably because Ascension is going to be somewhat redundant next year because lots of the partnership agreements are going to be torn up and new ones are going to be written in. So this is the last big Ascension tournament for at least a couple of seasons, and we have them around the world. The Chinese Ascension starts on the 11th of October, so only a couple of days away from that getting underway. We know that, well, there's obviously a few teams here, but Simon's team has turned some heads because, as we know, Simon was, until recently, the reigning world champion, of course, now NRG won it a few days ago, but he was reigning world champion with Edward Gaming. They dropped him, there was some drama, he's gone down to Ascension, and now he has a decent opportunity, it seems, to try and make that work. These are the relevant dates. So Chinese Ascension begins on the 11th, begins or finishes on the 19th. The Pacific starts on the 13th, begins or ends on the 26th. America starts on the 15th, and then EMEA starts on the 19th, but most of these end on a pretty similar day, and you know, they probably all end on the 26th. Actually, it just says the 27th because in Europe it's going to be finishing rather late my time. But anyway, so they're all going to finish in a couple of weekends time. China, as always, for some reason, is a week earlier than the rest. Now let's talk about some roster stuff. Giant-X, they are not, it seems, making any changes. Now we know, as I say many times, teams that don't win often will consider moves, but it also is to some extent dependent on expectations, right? Going into this year's end of the season, were Giant-X expecting much? Probably not really. They'd been kind of a non-factor for the majority of the season. A team like Vitality, a team like, let's say, Sentinels, Sentinels made it to the big tournaments, but their expectations are to win, and they didn't. So something's going to give. Even if the players don't want to change, the organisation will, and if the organisation doesn't, the players probably will, because they want better. Whereas for teams with lower expectations, it is plausible that teams that don't win could still stay together. And I think for Gen.G's perspective, it does make a better sense in the way that they weren't doing well. They made a couple of, moves. They changed things over time. They all of a sudden got pretty competitive at the end of the year. And yeah, they didn't finish the World Championship in the way that they would have liked to, but it feels like they're on a strong upward trajectory that maybe is not worth interrupting. So, reportedly, they're extending, and actually not even reportedly anymore, Ara, Grabinho and Flickless. Now, it's worth knowing that Cloud has like a long-term deal there, and Westside already has a deal until 2026. So, it looks like that is what Gen.G are going to do, and they confirm it yesterday. They joined this year and won all of us over. Next year, they will continue wearing our colours, and we've got, Ara, Flickless and Grabinho confirmed as players for the upcoming year. So, they've got the full contract extension, and it looks like they're going to keep their full roster together, which is, it's definitely an interesting decision. It may well be the correct decision, but it's certainly not something that you usually expect, right, from a team that, look, they were pretty good in the second half of the season, as we know, but, for a team with this amount of red, you wouldn't necessarily expect them to all stay together, especially because at the end of the year it wasn't exactly ideal. But look, they beat Sentinels at the World Championship, they lost to Paper Rex, who made a deep run, they beat XLG, then they lost eventually to the reigning, well, the champions that eventually won it, then they lost to a Heretics team, which you can also take, right? So you look at the teams they lost to, they made the finals of EMEA, they beat Fnatic on their road to get there. They beat Na'Vi. They beat BBL. They lost to Liquid in the end. They beat Sen and XLG at the World Championship. So, compared to expectations, their second half of the season was pretty damn strong. And yeah, the first half of the season wasn't especially pretty at all from the kickoff through the majority of Stage 1. But they got there in the end, and yeah, there's a bit more red than they would like. They've lost 4 of their last 6 series, but also the teams they lost to will give them confidence that they can potentially take even a further step up next season. So yeah, it's not something you usually expect, but Cloud, Grabinho, Westside, Flickless and Ara will stay as a roster going into next year, and I think it's exciting to see at least some teams stick it out entirely. That will not, however, be the case for Cloud9. So Cloud9, there was a time this season where people thought they might actually do something. They looked a little bit better for a glimpse, but as we know with Cloud9, when they come close to doing something impressive, it all tends to fall apart. And we're not sure 100% what they're going to do next, because Net is still under contract. A lot of the time the contracts run until either the end of the calendar year or until the end of October or something along those lines. Maybe 2 weeks after Champions sometimes is when the contracts are written until. But Net is being allowed to explore options. Again, when you see this, doesn't necessarily mean that he is going to leave 100%, but almost certainly he will probably be out the door, and Net will look at other options elsewhere. So he's allowed to explore options anyway during our rebuild process. So, confirming that C9 are going through a rebuild process, says he'd prefer to play Sentinel, open to in-game leading, or playing Controller or Scan Initiator. So pretty interesting from Net. We'll see what happens next here. Cloud9 have allowed Net to explore options, as he implies rebuild process definitely indicates further changes. That would not be too much of a surprise. The other thing in the Americas is this. So TSM are getting ready for their run at the Ascension, of course. We think that their head coach is getting linked to 100 Thieves as potentially their new head coach after their Ascension run is over. But they were scrimming against Evil Geniuses. Now, the rumour has it with EG that Ye is going to be gone, and they're having pretty much a full rebuild. Derek has also confirmed that he is open to leave, but again, in the same way with Net, he's still contracted, so it's still possible that he stays. Potter may decide to go in that direction. So, there was a scrim noted with Derek and Okonos, and of course Potter against TSM. Then there was another screenshot here, which is those same players, well, plus another couple of interesting ones, playing Winthrop University, and it was Potter this time spotted with Com, Tex, and Okonos. So in both of these screenshots, we're seeing Okonos, right? And there's a pretty good chance, I think, that he stays around. Just, obviously, these are, Lev, right? But this isn't Lev. This is Evil Geniuses, right? Lev are making changes, and all of these players are, it seems, being considered, of course, Com and Potter. They've got the relationship from a couple of years ago when they did some pretty great things on Evil Geniuses. Okonos, I think, is kind of a no-brainer. He was at a pretty high level, and yeah, Lev aren't getting rid of Sato, but I think Okonos has definitely done enough to maintain his spot in Tier 1. And yeah, look, if EG, if they bring in Okonos, Texcom, they have Derek, and they're looking for one, you know, and I don't know exactly how I feel in terms of roles there, and I don't know if I would necessarily bring in all of these players, but it is worthy to say that maybe that could be something which, on a relatively reasonable budget, they could take some steps in the right direction. So tweet your thoughts in the comments below. That's what EG are doing. That's what Cloud9 might be doing. More rumours, I'm sure, over the coming days. 100 Thieves did their own tweet. They were like, don't worry, we've updated the bio. But it's pretty unlikely that that's going to be the roster again anytime soon. So very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
Look at this. After we choked this Abyss and we went to Ascent, I look across the stage and Alpha was looking at me like this. I'm not even kidding. Across the stage, above his monitor, I see this. It's just Alpha looking at me. And I was like, fuck, bro. I was like, fuck. Like, now we gotta play a whole new map. And then we lost Ascent after that, bro. I know they thought the whole game was in there. Like, it was over. I just see this staring at me. I'm not even joking.
Again,
Alpha is funny, bro.